I've been hunting the same stretch of woods in rural Tennessee since I was 12 years old. I know every trail, every ridge, every hollow. So when something out there started answering back, I knew it wasn't the woods I thought I knew. It was mid-October 2 years ago. My buddy Derek and I drove up to the family lease on a Thursday to scout for deer season. We weren't even hunting. No tags, no weapons, just a couple of trail cameras and a bag of corn. The plan was to hike about 2 miles in, set up 2 cameras near a creek crossing we'd found the season before, and be back at the truck by dark. The walk-in was normal. Cool air, leaves turning orange and brown, birds still moving. Nothing strange. We found the creek, set up the cameras, dumped the corn, marked the coordinates on our phones. We were already talking about what we'd grab for dinner on the way home. It was when we started walking back that I first heard it. A branch snapping. Somewhere off to our left, maybe 30 yards out, deep in a thicket. I held up my hand and we both stopped. Deer, probably. Or a raccoon. We waited about 30 seconds, heard nothing else, and kept moving. 5 minutes later, another snap. Same side, same distance. Derek looked at me. I shrugged. We picked up the pace. I want to be clear. I'm not someone who gets spooked in the woods. I've been out there alone at 4 in the morning more times than I can count. The dark doesn't bother me. Animals don't bother me. But what happened next was not an animal. We were maybe half a mile from the truck when I heard my name. Not shouted. Not called out like a friend waving you down. It was just said, low and flat like someone reading it off a piece of paper. Kyle. Clean and calm somewhere in the trees behind us. I stopped walking so fast that Derek almost walked into me. We both turned around, nothing, just woods. Just gray light filtering through bare branches. I started. Yeah, Derek said before I could finish. Neither of us spoke for a moment. My first thought was that someone else was out there. Maybe a neighbor, maybe a trespasser. I called out. Hello, who's out there? My voice sounded smaller than I expected. Silence, not even wind. We waited nearly 2 full minutes standing still in that trail, watching the tree line. Nothing moved. No response. We decided it had to have been a bird. Some species that mimics sound. Maybe a mockingbird doing something weird. We both accepted that explanation faster than we should have. We started walking again. Faster now. I kept my eyes on the trail ahead and tried to focus on the sound of my own footsteps. But I couldn't stop thinking about how clearly that voice had said my full first name. Not hey or just a shout. My name, Kyle. Derek suddenly grabbed my arm. I looked at where he was pointing. Through the trees, about 50 yards off the trail to our right, something was standing completely still between 2 large oaks. Upright. Dark, against the shadows. The shape of a person. I stared at it for probably 10 seconds. It didn't move. Didn't shift. Didn't react to us at all. Just stood there in a way that felt completely unnatural. Too still. Too straight. I called out again. Nothing. We turned and walked out of those woods without looking back. I mean that literally. We made a silent agreement without speaking, and neither of us turned around again until we reached the gravel road where the truck was parked. We talked about it for the whole drive home. Derek said the figure looked tall, taller than a normal person. I said I wasn't sure, maybe it was just a shadow, maybe a dead tree I was reading wrong in the low light. We both wanted to believe that. The next weekend I drove back up alone to check the trail cameras. One of the cameras, the one we set up closer to the creek, had captured something the very first night. Footage from 2:17 in the morning. Now there's nothing on this property within 2 miles. No houses, no roads, no reason for a person to be out there at that hour. In the frame lit up by the infrared, you can see the deer trail, the creek bank, the corn pile we'd laid down, and at the very edge of the frame, partially behind a tree, there's a shape. You can just make out a shoulder and part of a leg. Standing there, motionless, facing the camera directly. The timestamp shows it was there for 11 minutes before walking off frame. I haven't been back to that property since. Derek says he'll never go back. The cameras are still out there, and I'm not going to be the one to retrieve them. Whatever knew my name in those woods that afternoon was still out there that night, waiting. That was just the beginning. The next incident will make you question the shadows in your own room. My name is Megan. I'm 24 and I've been hiking since I could walk. My dad grew up in the Appalachian Mountains and he raised me to be completely comfortable in the backcountry. I've done solo overnights in 6 different states. I've never once felt afraid of the forest itself. Until last September, when I hiked the same 3-mile stretch of trail 4 times in a single afternoon and couldn't find the end of it. I want to explain that carefully because I know how it sounds. I wasn't lost. I wasn't disoriented. I've taken that trail, Ridgeline Trail, at a state park in Western Virginia, probably 40 times. It's a straightforward loop, 3 miles. 1 entrance, 1 exit, same parking lot. 90 minutes round trip max. I went alone on a Tuesday when the park was empty. I signed the register at the trailhead at 1:08 in the afternoon. I know this because I photographed the page. It's still on my phone. The first mile was perfect. Cool and overcast, leaves down so visibility was good into the woods on both sides. I was moving at a comfortable pace, no headphones, just listening. I reached the halfway point, a wooden overlook bench at the ridge crest, in about 45 minutes. I sat for a moment, drank some water, took a photo of the valley, and then I started back down toward the parking lot. I walked for what felt like 40 minutes. No parking lot. The trail kept going, trees thickening, light getting dimmer. I checked my GPS. The blue dot was on the trail, moving correctly toward the exit. According to the map, I should have already been at the car. I kept going. Another 20 minutes, nothing. This is when I started paying close attention to my surroundings. I began marking, breaking small sticks and laying them across the trail so I'd know if I passed the same point twice. 15 minutes later, I found one of my markers. I had walked in a complete circle, on a trail that doesn't loop. I stopped moving and stood completely still. I told myself to be rational. GPS drift, maybe. A trail split I'd missed. I pulled out the physical paper map I always carry and spread it on the ground. 1 trail. 1 direction, no forks. That's when I noticed how quiet it had gotten. Not just quiet, silent, no birds. No insects. No wind in the branches. The kind of silence that feels applied, like someone had pressed mute on the whole forest. I've been deep in the backcountry before and I've never heard anything like it. Silence like that isn't natural. I kept walking. I tried doubling back entirely, going back up to the overlook bench and starting fresh from a known landmark. I reached the bench, took another water break, breathed, started down again. 45 minutes later, I found another one of my stick markers. I had circled again. By now, my watch read 4:30 in the afternoon. I'd been on this 3-mile trail for over 3 hours. I had enough water and snacks, but the light was going to go in another hour and a half, and I was starting to feel a low-grade panic working its way into my chest. I sat down on a log at the side of the trail, focused on breathing, and tried to think clearly. That's when I heard footsteps, not beside me, not on the trail ahead, behind me and slightly to the left, off-trail in the trees, slow and deliberate, the cadence of a person walking, not an animal. 1 step, pause. 1 step, pause. Coming toward me. I stood up and faced the trees. Nothing was visible, but the footsteps kept coming, getting closer. I could hear leaves compressing and the soft crack of twigs under weight. Still that same slow pace. Unhurried. Like whatever was making the sound wasn't concerned about being heard. I called out. My voice came out steady, which surprised me. I can hear you. Who's out there? The footsteps stopped. Complete silence again. That horrible pressed silence. My own breathing sounded loud. Then from somewhere in the trees, maybe 20 feet away, I heard my own voice played back at me. Not words. Not speech. Just the tone and pitch and cadence of what I'd just said, reflected back at me like an echo that was 2 seconds too late. I can hear you. Who's out there? My skin went cold from my scalp to my feet. I turned and walked as fast as I could without running. because something told me not to run. And 20 minutes later, I came out at the trailhead parking lot. My car was the only vehicle there. The sky was orange and pink. The register showed my sign-in from 108 and no one else's name. I drove home and I didn't sleep that night. I've looked for explanations. I've talked to park rangers, other hikers, GPS technicians. No one has a good answer for how a person can walk a loop on a straight trail, or why a forest would go completely silent, or what in those trees was practicing the sound of my voice. I drove past the park entrance a month later, and I noticed the sign had a small addendum at the bottom, one of those laminated notices in a plastic sleeve. I slowed down and read it from the car. It said the Ridgeline Trail was closed due to unexplained hazards, and had been since mid-September. I had been the last person to sign in. If your heart is already racing, take a deep breath, because our final story is the one that no one survived to tell. This happened to me and my two older brothers, Ryan and Cole, about 3 years ago. I don't talk about it much because when I do, people want a neat explanation, and there isn't one. Our grandfather owned 32 acres of wooded land in rural Michigan, and when he passed, he left it to our family. None of us had ever really spent time on the property. We'd seen it on maps, knew roughly where it was, but Grandpa had always kept to himself and didn't invite visitors. So in early November, the three of us drove up to walk the land, take some photos, figure out what we had. The property was all second-growth hardwood. Old fencing, a dry creek bed, a collapsed barn near the back corner. We spent most of the day just walking. No trails, just pushing through the brush with the GPS and a rough hand-drawn map our grandfather had left with the deed documents. Around 4 in the afternoon, we found something none of us had expected. Toward the northeast corner of the property, where the trees were thickest and oldest, there was a clearing roughly 30 feet across. In the center of it was a fire pit. Not a natural one, not just a ring of stones. Someone had lined it deliberately with flat-cut fieldstone, leveled and fitted. Around the perimeter of the clearing, at evenly spaced intervals, 7 thick wooden posts were driven into the ground. The tops of the posts had been carved. Not recent carvings. They were weathered gray and fuzzy with lichen. But they were deliberate. Symbols or figures I didn't recognize. There was no evidence of recent use. No trash, no ash in the pit, no boot prints in the soft earth. This clearing had been here for a long time. Cole took pictures. Ryan walked the perimeter, counting the posts. I stood in the middle and looked at each one, trying to understand what I was seeing. The light was going fast and the temperature had dropped, and I had an increasing and very specific feeling that I was being watched from the tree line surrounding the clearing. Not paranoia, not nerves, something more targeted than that. The feeling of a gaze, direct, patient, focused on me in particular. "We should go," I said. Ryan and Cole didn't argue. That was the part that confirmed something was wrong. My brothers argue about everything. When they both just nodded quietly and started moving toward the trail, I knew they felt it too. The walk back to the truck was about a mile. We did it quickly. Nobody talked. The light dropped into gray dusk and we were moving by feel and GPS glow for the last 10 minutes. We reached the truck, loaded in, locked the doors. The feeling of being watched stopped exactly when Cole started the engine. On the drive home, Ryan pulled out his phone to scroll through the photos he'd taken in the clearing. He stopped scrolling and held the screen toward me without saying anything. It was a photo from the northwest corner post, one of the carved wooden pillars. Ryan had taken the shot standing maybe 6 feet from it. The post was in focus, the clearing visible behind it, and standing just inside the tree line at the edge of the photo frame, barely lit, was a figure. It was standing between 2 trees, still just watching. I grabbed the phone and zoomed in. It was tall, thin. The posture was wrong in a way I still can't fully articulate. The proportions were off. The angle of the shoulders. The way the head was held. Human-shaped, but wrong. Cole pulled the truck over. We all looked at the photo. Then Ryan started scrolling back through the earlier photos. From earlier in the day. The barn, the dry creek bed, a fallen oak we'd climbed over near the property line. In the photo of the fallen oak at the top right corner, partially behind a cluster of brush the same shape, standing, watching. In the photo of the collapsed barn, near the back door almost swallowed by shadow, there, watching. This had been following us for hours before we ever reached the clearing. Cole drove us back to his house that night and none of us stayed on the property. We never returned. The hand-drawn map our grandfather had left with the deed is still in Cole's truck as far as I know, with the northeast corner circled in red. We've talked about what we think was out there. We have no conclusions. We've never found records of what that clearing was used for or how long it had been there. We tried researching our grandfather, whether he knew about it, whether it was his or something predating him. We found nothing. He'd owned the land since 1971, and before that, county records are incomplete. What I keep coming back to is the photos. Because whatever was out there at that tree line when Ryan took the picture, it wasn't alarmed by us. It wasn't retreating. It wasn't curious. It was watching us the way you watch something you've already decided about. Patient and still and certain. The worst part isn't even the figure in the photos. The worst part is that when I got home that night and looked at my own phone, I found a picture I don't remember taking. Time-stamped 3:47 in the afternoon, about 20 minutes before we reached the clearing. Shot from behind, down the trail we were walking. In the foreground, my two brothers walking ahead of me, exactly as I remember, and just over my left shoulder, so close it should have been visible to me, so close we should have heard breathing. The shape, right there, walking with us. It had been with us the whole time. Some places hold things that don't follow the rules we know. They don't need doors or windows. They don't care whether the lights are on. They move through the forest the way thoughts move through a dream. Without sound, without warning, and always a little closer than you realized. If any part of these stories felt familiar, if there's a stretch of woods you walk that sometimes feels different, a trail that seems longer than it should, a photo you've scrolled past quickly without knowing why. Trust that instinct. Whatever is out there has been patient for a very long time. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to subscribe for more true horror every week.